Welcome back to Knowledge Resources Author Insights. Today we're sitting down with Tracey Swanepoel, who is the author for our new publication, Leading for Engagement, 7 Sins and 7 Secrets. Tracey started out in strategy and communication before receiving her MBA at the Henley Business School, then working as a strategy executive and eventually starting her own company. She is widely respected as an expert on leadership and strategy, and we're so excited to have her. Tracey, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's an absolute pleasure, Amy. Great to be here.
So just going off the title, of course, we can see that your book is about leadership, it's about engagement, it's about really connecting with your employees. But before we get into what you actually talk about in the book, I'd like to take a look at what prompted it. Just in your professional history, what did you see about the importance of employee engagement and perhaps the lack of it that prompted you to start this project?
Thanks, Amy. Well, as you said, in your intro, I started out my career in advertising, doing strategic planning. And in that process, I got really curious about internal employee engagement and how businesses communicate with employees. And one of the reasons for that was when you are making an ad for a company, the first question you ask them is, what makes you unique? What makes you special? What makes you different? And invariably, the answer would come back, whatever the industry, the answer would come back and businesses would always go, it's our people. Our people are amazing. Our people are special. They are the uniqueness. And I got quite curious about this. And I started sort of digging to find out, do these people actually know this? And how well equipped are they to deliver on these promises? Obviously, as most of us would imagine, there is a huge gap there. So that prompted me to do my MBA dissertation on how could we take the learnings and the models from external marketing and advertising, things like branding, storytelling, segmentation. How could we take those concepts that really work well and apply it to the internal audience, the employee audience? And then when I was 27, I was put in charge of a little department in the agency. And for the first day, or actually for the first while, I was obviously very chuffed, very excited. And then this slow realization dawned on me, perhaps like many other leaders, that what had got me to that point, my technical expertise, was absolutely useless in terms of how do you actually go about leading a team of people. I honestly, I felt so ill-equipped. I felt totally, there was just a total gap. And it made me remember, many years previously, I played competitive tennis when I was growing up. I got a scholarship to a US university, and I played, competitively there. And then when that came to an end, I started coaching. And it's a similar feeling because, being the star player that needs to win the game is a totally different story to being the coach that needs to coach the star player to win the game. So I felt totally, I felt like there was nothing that I had to lean on. There was no sort of rough guide. There was no manual. And I guess what this book really is about is, how do you, if you are in a situation of leading people, whether it's 5 people or 50,000 people, what do you do? What is the manual? How do we go about it? So that really is the sort of a little bit of background in terms of how I guess, saw the problem and have personally felt, that issue and that lack.
It's interesting as well because there's so many of these external skills that you can actually incorporate into the workplace, and sometimes we don't. And you talk a lot about it in your book as well, different experiences you've had and that you've brought into that process. I'd like to give a little preview of the book. You talk about the 7 sins and the 7 secrets of leading with engagement. Now, without giving too much away, could you give us a preview of the first of these sins and the first of these secrets? I think they are separation and integration.
Yes, sure, Amy. So the 7 sins and the 7 secrets, where they, just a little bit of background in terms of where do they come from? in the conversations that leaders are having in businesses, they actually don't talk about engagement. They don't see it. They don't mention it. They talk about cost problems, safety problems, absenteeism, the need to cut costs, culture transformation. And I always sort of picture this as a little bit of an iceberg. Those are the issues that businesses see. But the underlying issue that drives all of that is actually engagement underneath that. A second thought is very much what I referred to, is that most people in leadership positions are there not because of their brilliant ability to manage people. They're actually there because of their technical expertise. But being a great engineer or a great accountant or a great actuary or a great tennis player does not put you in the position to actually lead other great engineers or actuaries or accountants. So there's a real gap in terms of that. And the third thing that I guess, and I'm leading up to the 7 sins and 7 secrets, but the third thing really is that the world of work, unfortunately, for many people, there is not a happy place. People at work are not loving it. They don't feel fulfilled. They don't feel connected to their own purpose or the purpose of the business. And obviously that directly impacts on engagement. I remember chatting to a friend of mine who left corporate banking quite a few years ago. She had a huge job and a huge title, and she left and she said, I've never been happier. And one of the reasons is because I don't wake up every morning thinking about who is going to destroy me today. The world of work it's not great. People go, I can't, one day when I've finished all of this, I'm going to do what I really love. There's something I write about in my book, The Sunday Scaries, which even I, having my own business, sometimes feel, which is that like doom and gloom at like 4 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon, where you kind of go, oh, the weekend's over. So people actually feel that. And obviously this, we see all of these ideas, all of these emotions directly translated into engagement and the low engagement levels that we see consistently coming through. So you asked about the 7 sins and 7 secrets. What I started to realize is that in businesses, mostly in businesses, the way they go about trying to actually address these issues or resolve these issues not only don't help, but actually, and I think probably unintentionally, make the issues worse. So I've sort of framed it with the 7 sins, and it's not meant to be doom and gloom, because for each sin, there's a commensurate secret. And the secrets are actually the things that have been proven over and over again by neuroscience, social science, psychology, behavioral economics to be the things that actually inspire and motivate people. So what I'm saying really is let's cast a spotlight on the 7 sins, and let's actually use the secrets to lead for engagement. So basically, the first one is about treating strategy, culture, and leadership as 3 separate entities, 3 separate disciplines. I actually visualize it as 3 circles that are not connected. Rather, what we should be doing is to look at them as integrated, and to give leaders practical tools how to actually make them come to life on a daily basis. So let me expand a little bit on that. Strategy, culture, and leadership, in my opinion, are 3 very powerful levers that we have got to drive engagement, because strategy gives people a sense of hope, a sense of their future, a sense of purpose. Culture is about, a great place to work. What does it feel like to work here? And leadership is about connecting, is about creating meaning, feeling a meaningful connection with the work that we do. So what we tend to do is in businesses, these being separate entities, they're often even in separate places in organizations. They are driven by separate departments. And what that is getting us, if you look at the result, you almost often as leaders, we look at things from our point of view, which is sort of, we have the holistic overall view. But if you are working in an organization, what is your view if you are sort of, in middle management? Strategy is something that exists in a PowerPoint presentation, if we are lucky, or on a flip chart, or somewhere in the CEO's office in, a file that unfortunately often is gathering dust. So strategy is there. Culture is often words, there's pretty words, and I'm not against pretty words at all, but culture is much more about what leaders do than what brochures say. So culture is in words, and leadership is dealt with as often a sort of on a generic basis. It's outsourced to another institution, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what I'm saying is that when you look at the reality of organizations, leading happens on a daily basis. And I deliberately say leading because it's a verb. Because in every meeting, at every level, whether it's senior management or your sort of middle management level, or even your lower levels, conversations are being had, meetings are being had where leading is happening. In the absence of strategy, culture, and leadership, and the absence of a practical way of that being an input into those conversations, it's like they don't exist. So life continues anyway. It's a bit like this too shall pass. So things are happening as they've always happened, and the results are what we've always got. So what I'm saying is that leaders actually need a practical way, skills and tools to bring this together. I often ask organizations and businesses, where is your leading to? In other words, how are you equipping your leaders to lead on a daily basis in everything that they do towards the strategy, to give the big picture, the why, enabling that connection of each individual to talk about and live and enact the culture. That's really what I believe needs to happen for engagement to rise, for leaders to actually be able to drive engagement.
I find it very interesting how everything is so connected. There's no isolation apparently in engagement. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's so interesting how every aspect of what the leader does somehow reflects on their engagement and on the culture itself. And I think that's what gets us. It's a little bit of an abstract concept, but that is exactly what I love about your book, because it's so practical, and it really does give those managers who, like you said, find themselves in that situation, never been a manager before, I don't know what to do. It really does give you those tips and tricks and tools that you can use to better yourself. And you name many in the book. I think visual mapping is one, and there are a few others. Yeah. Just as another little preview into the book, I love giving previews into books. Could you take us through one of the tools that you find helpful, or have found helpful, that you mention in the book?
One of the really powerful tools that I have seen work in terms of actually bringing the 7 secrets together in a holistic way is a visual map. And what this is really a distillation of everything about the company in terms of its strategy, its purpose, its culture, operational initiatives, where the company is going, the current reality, where people are. So a little bit of that is really important. It distills this into a compelling analogy or compelling story, and we visualize that. So we talk about the mountain that you're climbing, the marathon that you're embarking on. And by doing that, what a visual map does is it makes very abstract concepts like strategy and culture and the operating model and all of those things that are very abstract in business. It makes them tangible, it makes them practical, and then everybody remembers them. So it makes them memorable and understandable. And the picture, the visual, really helps us, everybody, to remember things. I talk a lot in my book about the power of visuals, and how if I say to you, don't think about a pink elephant, it's impossible for you to remember the word don't, because pink elephant is a visual that stays in our minds. And a visual map is actually exactly like that. But it doesn't end there. So you've now got this picture, and that's great. The power really of a visual map is how it works as a tool to equip leaders at all levels to have the right conversations about the business on an ongoing basis. So what I talked about earlier, when I talked about the gap, when you treat strategy, culture, and leadership as separate entities, a visual map solves that. It brings it together, because it is a tool that leaders can actually talk to and have ongoing conversations about the business on a daily basis, related to the latest thing that's happened in the business, and discuss it with their teams. And not only discuss it as a talking head. In fact, it should never be a discussion as a talking head. It's about actually catalyzing the right conversations with teams. So I do make the point in my book that dialogue is the oxygen of change. So what you need to do as a leader is not so much talk, but actually listen and actually facilitate conversations among your team, because when they speak is when the internalization of the message actually happens. So that's why, a visual map really is a powerful tool. It comes from many, many years of sort of trying and testing, and probably 20 or so years of working primarily in the resources industry. So it's very based on practicality of how does this work when it's really a complex situation, when people don't speak English, when they may not be literate, when there's a gap in terms of supervisor and the next level. How does this tool actually bridge this gap? In fact, we did a map many years ago for a company in the DRC, and the people were mainly French speaking. And amazingly, this worked incredibly well, because it actually facilitates conversation as people need to have conversation.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Tracey. I think that's all we have time for. I hope these little previews and tidbits were interesting for our viewers. If you would like to order the book, there will be a link available in the description. Thank you so much, Tracey.